Today, uh, I am going to talk about the API security. So, in the microservice, whenever you are building microservice one, microservice two, or any couple of microservices, so might be one microservice communicate to the other microservice. Generally, for that we have using the REST API to communication between the microservices. So that's great. We know how to build the API in the Python. So today our objective, what are the API we build, how we are integrate the security part. Security means let's microservice say want to get data from microservice B. So microservice B or any maybe a third party or anyone can access your API, or you want to restrict? No, these are the my API. Only authorized person, maybe person B, microservice A or microservice B are the only allowed. So whatever the API this microservice expose, we want to put some authentication authorization. Right? That means first the valid user can access my API, and if let couple of API, maybe specific person only can access those API. Specific kind of roles a person have. So those scenario, today we are going to talk how we can build our API, and some API can be publicly accessible. Anyone can access the public API. Some API are accessed by the authorized. Only authorized means ki valid user. If any valid user, that means you have a, generally how to validate user, we say, hey user, can you provide your user detail and your password. If they pass, that is a valid person. For valid person, some API, all the valid users of my company can access those API. Some API can be no, maybe this is the valid, but the specific role they have, if admin role, they can access. Maybe some API maybe only the tester or only specific user. So all the API we expose that have some level of security parameter. That means first, my API is accessible for everyone. There is a no authentication authorization required. Second, no, I have a API. That's API only can access by the valid user. That means which I know. They provide his credential, username and password, and valid user can access my API. And third parameter, maybe no, we have a couple of API, but some API for a specific kind of a role. Maybe some administrative can access this API, some QA can access this API, can some developer can access this API. The such kind of a role based restrictions also we can apply. So today we are going to understand how we are apply API security on in the Python. So let's understand the basic about the API security. So as I talk, there are two basic kind of words: authentication and authorization. This is the first primitive. So verify the identity of an user. Let's you build a system. Let's you build a system or an application. So you are allow your application can access by the right person, valid person. Not anyone can access my application, right? So there are such applications that are like a public Google search or something. Some applications are open, anyone can access freely without authentication, without authorization. That is known as public application. Okay, but sometime you are going to the build application, that application is accessed by only the right person. How to decide who is the right person? Person one is the right, or person two is the right? How to decide? So you can say, hey, whenever someone going to access my application, I ask, hey, please share your user details and your password so that I can validate I know to you. That means authentication is the process where we means our application going to identify the right user, generally with the help of a username and password, and with the help of some token or something. So this is a very primitive. That means first things, whatever the application you are going to develop, you have to ensure that your application can perform the authentication. That means they are going to the check user, this is the valid user or invalid user. Okay. So, next come about the authorization part. Authorization part say, hey, let's you are the finally you let's assume you are in our office. Okay, you are in office. Okay, you are in office. So first, let's you are going to the office. You are going to the office. So our security guard maybe ask, hey, can you show your ID card? If I am a employee of that company, I have a valid ID card, I can show my ID card. The showing ID card your authentication. Now you go to the premises, and in this offices couple of maybe room, maybe some a room like reception, some look a common room, some others lab, some other server, some of the HR department, different kind of rooms and department available. So now, if you have valid ID card, that means you are allowed to go reception. Yes, you are allowed to go maybe cafeteria. Yes, you can go to the financial department. You can access the financial record. Maybe not you are right person. You can access the particular labs, specific server lab. Might be not right person. So maybe you are the right person, but you have a not a specific role, so access every resources in the company, in the organization. So those scenario is a concept come as a authorization. That means if you have a right user, you have a right user, now you have checked, you have a specific role, you are the admin person, you are the HR person, you are the CEO, something. If according to your authority, according to your roles, the particular departments allowed to access are allowed to not access. The authorizations is going to work and check what is your role in this organization. So granting access to the resources based on his roles and permission. So authentication is validating the right user. Second, authorization is checking what is your role. You are the admin role, you are the HR role, you are the finance role. What is the role? According to the role, you can access the resources or the API. So these are the very basics about your authentication and authorization. So any system you build, any API app build, if your client want to communicate with the application, you are going to ensure that they are the right person and they have right roles and permission to access the particular resources. Next point come about the JWT. So whenever you are going to pass username and password and authentication authorization, so applications use some kind of a technique. Always, let's say you are going to access your application first time, you pass the username and password, you can access the application. You can again go to the next time, again you ask application, next click, next. Every time your application asks username and password, username and password. Okay, so those scenario you are you have to provide, but sometime our application have a maintain some session cookie, we know, hey, previously you already verified it's okay. So if you are the right person, if you are a person, that time you provide the authentication details and it's work fine. Sometime, so let's you have a build one application, application one, and we have another application two, application B. Now this application talk to another application. So this application say, hey, give me your username and password. So how this application know your username and password? Username and password is very secure information. Only specific user know this is my password. Password cannot be shared with application B or application C. So in those scenario, let's say application B want to exchange data application C or B. So how they are provide his authentication? So for those scenario, there is a concept of your compact kind of a document assign the signature. So someone like a JWT token, where say first time user can log in with his credential and generate one access token. Hey, this is my access token. Access token. Now access token I can share with this B party, and B party can whenever going to access the resources. B party say, hey, this is my access token. I have access token. Let me allow to access the resources. If this application going to validate whatever the access token you have, they are going to check this is a proper user, valid user. They are going to check they have proper role. If something okay, then application allow to communicate. So here we are using the couple of mechanisms to ensuring that how the application to communicate to another application where there is no human intervention required. For those scenarios, generally we are talking the tokens. So write tokens. So first the right person who have a right roles and permission and authorized person, they can generate one access token. This access token used by my application to communicate. So let's say another application can communicate. So now and this token also knows in once we generated token, there is a concept of expiry. How much long this token is valid? Maybe 1 day, 2 day, 3 day. You can set the expiry time as well. So these are the some JWT token concept we can go. And whenever you are exposing API, we are whatever the API you can test from the Swagger. This is not the more important. So the things what we discuss, whatever the your application A want to communicate with the application B, whenever they are going to access resources, if this expose the secure API, if they have exposed the secure API, that means they ask, hey, show your validity. If you are the human, this is the human access API, then they pass the username and password and access the resources. It's right, correct. But once another application going to access, so how no application and password? So there is a concept of the token. So there they generate the JWT token. Hey, this is a token. You have a token, pass the token, and token can taken validated by the our application. And if you write valid token, not expired token, they are allowed to access the resource. Who generate this token? Generally, the right person, valid role can generate the API. We're going to discuss how we can generate token, how can access the API. Couple of API going to one is the public API. Without authentication, without authorization, anyone can access the application. Maybe another API that's only the valid user, only the authenticated person can access. Third kind of API, you can build the role base. Hey, specific role do you have, then you can access. Specific role, then you have access. So let us try to build this secure API so that the communication between microservice can happen very smoothly. So once you understand this basic, the implementation part in the Python is very simple. So let's look how we can implement. So what till now discuss, whenever you are working the couple of microservices that can deployed anywhere, if the communication happen between the microservices, generally communication happen in the form of your REST API. Okay, so a REST API. So the REST API, how can ensure that REST API is secure? For the security reason, we are going to take, hey, token based, stateless authentication, and role based authorization. So generally, applications are using nowadays applications are using role based authentication, are the and the you can say authentication and authorization. So here we are going to ensure that authorization via the JWS token and the authorization via the role base. What the role you have. So generally different company have a different kind of terminology used. Somewhere role base or permission base. Overall objective you have a authorize the resources, which API accessed by the which person. Okay, So before going to start implementation, let's talk the basic what kind of a dependency we are going to use. First, we are going to use the dependency or fast API because we are going to build couple of API. These API we have to using the Python's provide the lots of frameworks to develop the REST API. And here we are going to using the MySQL. So whatever the user right user not be available in the database, and that's have a role and password everything. So for those scenario, you are using the MySQL database here for storing users in his role data, and we are using the communication between your communication between the my app between the database and everything. So we are not going to write every insert query, SQL submit query. Instead, we are going to the ORM tool for the managing the database instructions. And for generating token, access token, we are using the PyJWT tokens code library that's generate the JWT token, so that one microservice can communicate to another microservice via tokens. And whenever you are going to store user detail like username and a password, so generally we are not going to store password is a very plain text, because the password is very secure information. So so in the database, you did use the user detail and password, but plain text password we are not going to store. Anyone can access the database; they know your password. So for that, we are going to use the bcrypt encryption and decryption technology, cryptography. So here there is a very bcrypt kind of library available in the Python to making your password encryption. Means ki let us example like your password like PWD your password and 123. If I store this plain text in the database, anyone can access database and know the password. So instead of this plain text, we can convert in the particular some x 25 p x y column something, some different character we can convert. That's another hash number, you can say something hashing algorithm. So we are going to use the I'm not going to write the complete code how the particular plain text can convert it to the cipher text or encrypted kind of value. So what happened, we are going to the bcrypt. The bcrypt API say, hey, just use the hashing function and just convert your plain text to the encrypted text. And encrypted text are going to store in the database. The database, you have a user detail, user name, user password, role, everything, but the password would be not readable. This is a password in the encrypted format, so that anyone can see the password. Anyone can see the password as something, some character written, but what is the written, they cannot, because they are encrypted format. Okay, so for those and once the password going to the verify, these are a couple of API we are going to use. So let's first we whatever the dependency we required. So these are kind of dependency fast API. To whenever you can develop any API to provide your API always available, we need a kind of one server where my application can go deploy and run. So you are going to use this server and your ORM tool and the MySQL connector and your encryption library and your cryptography, everything we are going to install. Okay, so for simplicity, just you can install python name and just place here, you can install very successfully. So once you install the library, yeah, these are the kind of important you can say the classes we are going to use. We are going to use the fast API to develop API. This is the dependency that also come from the your fast API. Here we are going to use to invoke the dependency functions and some exception handling if your JWT username is not valid or something. Similarly, you are going to use your password auth to password bearer token and password form request. Whenever from the Swagger UI, you are going to authenticate, you need to pass username and password, and those we need a request form base. And here we are using the ORM model. What the if you are exposing any API request and response. What is the request parameter? What the response parameter? Everything we are going to use. Okay, here we are going to use the ORM tool for the database designing, column name, integer, everything, and lots of things we are going to use here. And here cryptography are going to use. Here you are going to the JWT token, and these are the some important date and times API. So these are the things we are going to use. And so let us just instead of talk, let's just create some class and use this. So let us have a blank file, and one things if you notice, I have already installed this library. You can just install. So these are the library. So these are the library we are going to use. Okay, so once this library used, and this is the way, first you have to install this, install using this command. You can just copy paste this command and run in the python. So once you install dependency, so let's just build one simple our API fast. So for building any API, we have a very simple fast API kind of export. So here, so let us take this simple code and build. Okay. So now we are just going to make one API building. This is the, we are using the Fast API framework. We have already imported from here, from the Fast API. You import Fast API, and here you mention your whatever the application name, version, something. Or you, if you want to just skip them. And after that's very simplest way how to build the API. Just say, hey, get API, post API, delete API, whatever API you want. Just write one specific method. Let's be written a specific method and expose the root. This is the I expressed by the, this is the get API. So anyone can access my this function using the get API. And how to run your application? Just say, hey, this is the server I use. A server I will run API. Check your main file name dot app. This is the application I want to run. Your, you can say, host name, machine name, and your port number, and reload true. If something I change, it's automatically deployed. So this is done. Then you can just restart here. Now your application is running, and you can launch. And now your API, and even by default, there is Swagger API. This is the Swagger API also. Okay, so this is the very simplest way here to build the API. What we did, simply we initialize our fast API object app, and here app say, hey, from app we have defined one simple method. This is a simple method, and in this simple method we can simply say, hey, just map with this slash. So now our API mapped. Okay, so here our API map. So this is the very simplest form. So hope it's clear how to build API using the you can say fast API. So here let's we are going to expose API. So what we did, simply we write one simple method, one method. This is the simple method. We have written simple method, and after that can say, hey, this is we create just one object like app about the fast API. And now I want to expose, this is an API. So you know, as a API have a get method, post method. So you can say, hey, API, I mention the root, hey slash. So anyone can access slash API, they can access the method. So how to expose this API? We have to start the server. I can say, hey server, can you run on this? This is my main app application, run it, and this is the port, this is the port. So whenever you can go and check, this is the port number, this is the IP number, this is the port number, and this is the API, and you can get this, invoke this method always. The API development is very, very simple in a Python. No rocket science, any API can develop. Okay, and anyone can test. Okay, so by default, if you say this is the slash, you can get it. By default, the fast API support the Swagger implementation. You can say slash Swagger, and this is the API anyone can access. Notice this API can access, welcome to this. So even you can access this API from the Swagger documentation, or even you can use the postman. You can say, hey, this is my API, I want to access. So when I can say, hey, this is my slash API, and I can access the API. So now your API exposed, server is running on this port. Anyone can access this API anytime. So now exposing API in the Python with the fast API is very simplest. Let's move to the next. Now you have a develop API, and notice this API can access by anyone. There is no any kind of authentication authorization, nothing in demand. That means this API is not secure because they're not asking any kind of authentication, authorization, permission. So let's think how we can build our the API that's are a kind of a mm, so let us talk here. So whenever we are going to the build API, so now this is the we have already going to the build. So what the things here we are going to do? First, we are going to uh, uh, accessing my application. Let's see, this is my application. Anyone can go access the application. Then we have to create one users. So we are going to the create users. Any users going to register ourselves. Okay, so let us any application, you go first install the application, and after that you register yourself. You can say this is my username, this is password, what is going to role. So first we are going to make one endpoints that registers user, so that our application know this is the right person. So we have exposed one API that's give our username, password, detail, everything, and I'm going to save those information in my database. Whenever I'm going to save those informations, we need to throw username, password, everything. So here what we require, the database. Okay, we required some tables. So here we are going to in a slice for some configuration for database, some for the Python application, and we can create users. Once you are able to register user, then after that you can say, hey, this is my application, can any valid user can access. So we are going to expose one more API that say, hey, how we can register as a user. Okay, so let us for those scenario, here we are going to develop one API that's register develop API, develop post API, register yourself, user, new user. So whenever you're going to register user, that means you provide the user detail. So in our case, we are going to say, hey, this is my user. We are going to access from the Swagger UI. Swagger need kind of your request object. What the request object would be, I can say user. And once receive this detail, I'm going to set the database. So we require some database configuration so that my application can communicate to the database and read data from the your Swagger documentation. Yeah, UI part. So for those scenario, we need a define some user. That means we going to some database configuration, and once database configuration happen, we're going to create the model. And once model done, then whenever particular users, let us once the user fill his form, fills in username, detail, role, password, and once send this request come, and server side we receive this request, and we are going to save those in the database. Before saving database, and check what is the username, what is the password, and what is the role. And first, what is the password? You're going to encrypt the password, something that cannot be read by the human user. So this is things we are going to do here. So we are going to configure database, configure whatever the user request here. I need a kind of a model request response. So here request response model, on the server side database configuration, everything we are going to do. So let's do kind of a couple of configuration. What the database configuration? Simply database configuration is very simple. You can say, hey, this is my database configuration. So what the your create engine? This is the I am using to create engine API. Here MySQL and connector Python MySQL and my database username root password where your application is running, what is the port number and what is the database. So already I created test DB. So if you check here MySQL ISQ SQL user root hyphen password and now I'm a so databases. So these are I already created one test database, right? Use test db. Okay. So tables. Okay. So no, there is no table created. Okay. So let's this is the one configuration. Once database configuration done, so what the configuration we did, we simply say this is my port number and database are working. And once the can say, hey, this is the session local session maker is the again API used from the ORM who provide the everything. Yeah, this is my engine, auto flush, everything pass, and now session local created. Okay, so now it's done. So let us so now you can create the database. Okay, our once connection established, we are going to say, hey, so let us create one class user, and this is the base. Base means again we are going to use this ORM tool, and here say what is the table name? Table name is users. What is the column ID? Username and the hash password and the role. What is the role? So these kind of a four column I am going to create. Okay, and once thus you can say, hey, just create this engine, we will create all table. So now your database table is automatically created by the ORM. We are not going to create table, everything taken care by my ORM frameworks. Once this done, let's whatever the API request response would be. So notice our API request would be your create. So we can define one model as well as. So let us we can define simple one say hey create user model. That is the base model is come from your ORM Swagger documentation. You can say once user going to the create, they require username, password, and role. And what the response? Let's key user going to the create. What the response would be? Response maybe you can use the access token. Yeah, what kind of tokens here? Two kinds of our model we created. Okay, so now let's once your application going our API going to connect to the database. So we need a database session. So let's create one database session. So here we just notice you are going to create your post API name, URL. What the request would be? Create model, username, password, role they are demanding, and what the database. Once the request come, we need a database. You can say depend on is database. They are going to use the local session. This is the local session already we created here. They use the local session, and once this is created, they can. So what the benefit here? Why we're not directly here? By default, if session is used, and by default not used, they are going to close the database session automatically for us. So now notice our API is registered API is ready. Anyone can go and register. So next now request parameter we define this request parameter. What is the database connection? We can define the database connection. Now once we receive the database, we have to check the particular user exists or not. Notice we have decided your username should be unique. That means the one username is the only one, not to consider duplicate users. Okay, so here so once whatever the username and password we receive, we need a kind of a encryption algorithm. Hey, let's go whatever the password I want to password convert to the highest password so that no one can read. So for those we need the method that can convert our we read one method get hash, just pass the hash word, and here we are going to the this is the uh, crypto context. This is a bcrypt kind of models we have already used. This have already provided hash function. You just pass your password. I pass the password, and they return me the hash. And now this is the hash, and I can say now we have a user details available as password available. So I can just create the user model, and you can say whatever the username, what is the password, whatever role you can define. And now we have already database connection available here. We have a database connection available. db.add new user, and just the database commit and refresh the new user so that new user can be updated. So now your API, post API available. Now in this way, any user can register ourselves. Okay, go and test. So let's go to Swagger and just refresh it. So notice one more API, register API is available. Now here we can go and register ourselves. So this is also API, just go and register. Let's register our admin. Let's say admin same password, and role also admin. So we created one user. Notice admin and password admin and admin. So once you register, they are going to store the information in database. Username is the same, password would be the hash, and role would be the admin. So let's say. So now they created user created successfully. Let's check in the database. Uh, let's sort tables. Okay, one user table already created, and select star from users. Okay, so notice one row id created, user id and admin. Notice this is the your password, so no one can know password, only you know once you register yourself, and what your role is admin. So let's register a couple of more, maybe this is the let's one qa kind of a role. Qa username, maybe qa and give the role as a qa. Here username password you can give according to you, this one, and this is the also success. And let's add one more, like a developer. Dev, dev. So now develop. So if you notice here, we have a three user created: admin, qa and dev. They also have an admin qa role here, and the password is a different encrypted password. So we have at least develop one api. That's api register our user. Once you register your user, okay, you can expose how the user know our token, or I'm a right person or unright person. There would be API something login, go login and detail something, and you can get your access token. So let's next we go to the develop one API. The API that's a login in application. So yes, we are going to develop one more API or API for the login. Now you created the user. Now user can log in my application. So once user going to log in, they check share our username password. So here we are using the OAuth 2 password request form. They asking the username password request form, and this is the library which already we are using from this FastAPI security module. By default, FastAPI security module provide this, and this also we need a database also. So once they pass the username and password, you can check the particular user exists in database or not. You can just say, hey, database query, filter the particular username exists or not. If user exists, okay, and also verify the password, because the password is not plain text. Then we have to write the password verification code, something. You know the password, database has encrypted password, so you required some kind of a password verification method that verify your password. So for verify your password, we are kind of a simple method. We are going to use the, hey, let's verify your password. Let's verify your password. Here verify password method, okay, this is the plain text password and this is the hash password, okay, and they are going to verify, please using this crypto context and you pass the verify. They are going to the verify your password. So now whatever the password you pass and whatever the user have a hash password, both you can pass. So what the here logic say, uh, so from the once you go to the login, you pass your username and your password. Okay. So this username, password, whatever they receive by our server, they receive by server. The first, whatever the username, I am go to the check database, user exists or not. First, our we call database API and check user detail. So now your user have a username, your hash password, and your role already have. So now the user already share his password. Now we're going to validate the user enter password and this hash password are both are the same or not. Because this is not we can compare, because here is the here the plain your password, plain password, but database have a encrypted password. So you need to verify. So again, whatever this you can say, we are going to convert again your hash, again hash, this hash already available. If both are equal, you can say, hey, these are the right person. So this API simply say whatever the password right, they are going to again make the hash, and whatever the database existing has, both are a match or not match. The same thing here say whatever the user password prune and whatever the database has password, we can just write simple API. It can verify the plain password and hash password both are the same or not. And this is already a crypto context already provided this verify method. Okay, once the user is validated, means user have a right username, right password. If this is right, then we generate the one token, JWT token. Hey, this is a token. From this token, you can access further API. Okay, then we have to write one more method that can create one access token. So this is a simple one methods that help us to create one access token. Now creating access token, what they say, just pass me the your whatever the expiry time, whatever you want to tell some expiry time, you can tell by default 15 minutes, 60 minutes, whatever you want to say, and just whatever the data you have, you can just copy them and apply some expiry times and just say, hey, in code whatever the parameter we have, and here we are going to the JWT encode. JWT encode and returns the you have a token. So this is the method I can create token, pass the username and his role. Two parameter we pass as a, this is notice the data in the form of your dictionary key value sub and key. Why in the sub, why in the role, whatever the things you want here, you can key value, any number of parameter pass as a data. So once you pass this data, I can go, hey, I receive the data, and if you want to some expiry time, you can put. So here we can just whatever data, we can just copy the data, and after that you can update your expiry time. By default, we mention here expiry time is 50 minutes or anything else you want. And here says JWT encode and pass. Whenever you are going to encoding pass, encoding the JWT we are using from this JOS library. Okay, here JWT say I encode whatever the data you have, pass the some secret key and some hashing algorithm. So this is the things you can read out the cryptography. Whenever you read cryptography, the cryptography concept. Let us we have a plain text. Let us we have a plain text. This is a kind of password test. So here we are going to convert your JWT token. So you have to tell two things. One about the secret key, something private kind of a key you can mention here, and you can also mention which algorithm, couple of algorithm, hash algorithm, SHA algorithm, RSA algorithm, couple of algorithm you can pass. Here you can pass, hey, this is the algorithm. Using this key, using this algorithm, this text is converted to the particular JWT token. The JWT token already created and returned to you. So once you created this token and you can respond to the, hey, this is your access token, and from this access token you can further communicate. So notice how now our API is login is created. Now you can validate login API. Okay, and let's check our login is working or not. Okay, so if you refresh here, now again API created. Let's log in, and here the by default notice this is a form created by our code. This is the form. You can say, hey, our input is the OAuth to password request form. So here you can provide your username and password, and they can receive. So here you can say, hey, let's try out and pass maybe my username admin and password maybe 123 wrong password, and I just try to execute. So notice here invalid credential. Whatever the information you pass, they are not matched. So let's pass write the correct password, admin, right password, and execute. So notice they have created one access token for you. This is the access token created for you, and you can use this to communicate the secure API. So very simple. Just first validate username. First we are doing validating is the right username and password. If right username and password, then create access token and return this is your access token, and types of bearer token we are getting by default. So now you have a users available. User can get his access token. Now let's build some protected API. Only the valid person, only authenticated person can access API. Okay. Okay, so let's build API that's simple, one protected API, simple API. So let's you can build one simple protected API. So what we say, hey, we are going to get such URL protected, and once going to protected URL, you have to provide the user details, means a token. So they depend on the your one more kind of verify. Now we have a token available. Once you have a token available, you can pass this token, and that token you need to the verify. If token is the right, then allow to access your API. If token is not valid, that's not allowed. So this is the one you can verify user by access token. So you have to write one more method like hey, let's verify the current user. What are the user details? What are the tokens you pass? This token, I am going to again use the JWT token. First, we encoded they have generated your token. Same JWT API say, hey, I can decode whatever the token user pass. I will what does your secret key you pass, and what the algorithm you use, what the algorithm you pass. You pass, then they receive your payload. And payload, because whenever you added you have we are added some here. Once you added, notice here we are added our format like a once you register you passing the subject, username, and role. So we can, hey, I want to get the particular subject username, this particular user exists or not exist, and not exist or exist you can check. And after that, if not exist, that's a credential exception. This your token is not valid. If token is valid, user exists, that means you can just check, hey, can you give me the user detail from users, and return the users. So if this is your token is the right, then they return the users. So here just using the JWT token to encode and the valid and check the particular user, and whatever the user pass, those user must be exist in our database. If exist database, then we can return the credential. So this is the way you can develop the protect API. So let us, if we are going to access the protect API, okay. So let's refresh here. Okay. So let us refresh here. Now refresh here. Okay. Now this is the your API, and this is your protected API. Sorry, protect API, and I am trying to get this API. Get this API. Notice, not authenticated. You are not right person to access the. If you access this API, you are able to access. So this is the public API. Anyone can access. Okay. So let's I want to access this API. So how we can pass our token? So first we have to let's get the token. Okay, let's get the token. Okay, I have to again get the token. So let's get token for the admin. Admin. I have to get. So now we have a this token available, and I can go use this token to this is my token available. Token I can copy and let us just from the postman. Okay, so if postman I can say root, it's accessible. If I say protected, protected, protected API, you test notice could not validate the credential. So now if I am right person, I have access token, so I can go authorize here and select the bearer token, and here pass the way bearer token. Whatever token I have pass here and I send. So notice, hello admin, you are the admin. So if you have a right kind of a permission, then you can access. So notice here, if you go execute here and close. If you access this application, notice by default they are not allowed. So here in the Swagger, if you authenticate here as well, just click here the click here and authenticate here, and here you can pass your admin username and password. This is the here we are using the form base, so they are asking username and password. You can write here. Once you write it, they can generate the token and set in the browser itself. In this browser automatic the Swagger automatic save and execute here. So notice they have a allowed to here. So notice Swagger also share the curl command. In this curl command, this is the curl command, they share the token as well as. And if you copy this curl command and maybe go to the terminal, let's open a new tab. And here if you access curl API, notice we are able to access. So from here by default you can use the curl -x get your API header content time authorization bearer and specify the token. So same thing you can use from curl, or you can use from the postman. Here postman option, postman also share that if you want to hear code, they can share the complete code. Hey, this is the kind of your token, everything here you can pass right now. So this is the way you can now your API. If someone want to protect it, they can access protected. If you access a public API slash, there is no protection required. Okay. So now every right person, let us we are try to access from the different protected API. Okay. So let's other user, test user, admin user, any we have a couple of user created. So let's generate token. Hey, let's generate token for the dev user. So let us say, hey, I am a dev and a password I pass and generate. If this is the dev token and I can pass, then they can identify this is the dev token. Copy here. Oh no, miss. Copy here, and you can use the postman. Here you can say, hey, bearer token, this is the token, and I can just delete and press the token and just send it. Notice, hello dev, your role is the dev. So they mentioned the tokens, from the tokens you can validate. So whatever the token you have, you can also use this commodity JWT token. Here by default the official website about the JWT token. Here you can just pass your detail or your token, and notice this token identify, this is the algorithmic pass, type is the JWT, and subject is the dev, role is the dev, and expiry time, this is the expiry time. Okay, so this is the expiry times, whatever expiry time we have set. So this is the way, this is the identify. Here, notice that not a password, everything here. This is JWT token, have a three part. One part your header, another part you the payload, another part your signature. Later part we have to understand lots of secret verify here. So this is the way you can validate. This is the one part, your the header part, another part, your the payload part, another part your signature part. So generally JWT token have a three kind of uh, uh, or kind of if you let's check test generate the password for the QA and generate the token. This is the QA token and validate. This is the QA token and you can validate here. Notice they can identify this is the QA role. So from this code, they can identify the same code we written in our code base. Whatever the role pass, they are going to the check the or your token, whatever token we have, just JWT encode them, and after that, just whatever the payload, they get the username. And if the particular database user exists, you can say user exists. I'll say credential exception, credential not found. Credential exception, and that is what of the credential exception. Hey, 401 unauthorized, IA code not found. This is the token type here. Whatever the message you want to clear, hey, could not validate credential something. This is the message we share. Okay, so till now we are able to build the API that's our protected API. This is the public API. These are the protected API. But any valid user can access. So now let's talk. I want this API or a specific API can for the developer, a specific API for the QA, a specific API for the admin. The role based how to validate the role based kind of your authorization. So let's do the role based authorization. So role based authorization, let's develop one API that's required the role based authorization. Okay. So yeah, like this is just one API we are going to be develop for admin. So only admin can access this API and no other like a dev or QA cannot access this API. So for that, we have to just validate our role. So we are going to validate whatever the user we have, the role is admin or not. If admin then allow, else don't allow. Okay, so let us define our role, how to validate our role. So let's verify our role using the verify method. Okay. So this is the one method say roles, whatever the role here pass you admin QA, whatever pass, and here we are going to check get whatever the you pass the token, that token go to validate is from this our API validate token, and they return the user. If you write return users, now you have a user available and you can check the user roles. Allow role is match or not. If this role is match, then you can return the particular role. If not match, you can say access deny for this role. So now you have developed one API, admin API, and then can access by the only admin role. So let's check this API. Let us check slash. So notice protected API access by the dev, means dev bearer token. So let's try to access the admin API and get the admin. So notice access deny for role dev, because this API we designed for admin only. So if you pass the admin token, this API can be accessed. So let's generate admin token. Let's generate the admin token. Admin. Now we have admin token. So the admin token. Let's postman pass the admin token. And now check the admin API. So notice, welcome to the admin API. User admin role admin. So now this API is only accessible by admin. Even the dev is the right, QA is the right. Let's QA try to access this API. So let's generate the QA token. QA. QA. This is the token, QA token. Copy and here you try to change this token and send here. Notice the access deny for the QA role. Because this API is specific designed for the role only admin. So you can specify, hey, this is the API, not just generic API, just not just validate. Even after validate, you have to also ensure that the particular role is the right role or not role. So first we validate the token, second we validate the role. So let's define some couple of more API. That's for the dev, that's for the QA. Let's define two API. Okay. So now we have defined two more API. One is the QA, one is the dev. But here, this QA API can be accessed by the QA as well as the admin. You can say, hey, this QA API can be accessed by the QA and the admin as well as. The multiple roles you can define. Some have a major role. Similarly, dev API. Dev API can only access by the dev API or the admin. Anyone can access. So let's test. Let's test this QA API. If you test QA API allow, let's test the dev API. Dev API. Dev API is not allowed here. Let's test the admin API. Admin API, admin API not allowed. But if you use the admin as a role, admin token, they can allow. Let's generate the admin token. Let's generate the admin token. Admin. Admin. Generate token. This is the your this is your token. And now let's change. And if you test here, admin can access this API. Let's QA API. QA API can access by admin as well as your notice. QA API can access by admin role as well. QA API can access by QA as well as the admin API. Similarly, if you try to take the dev API, dev API also accessed by the admin, because here we mention this admin access by the dev API, admin access by the QA API, admin access by the admin API. But QA cannot access the admin API. QA cannot access the let's say dev API. The dev API can access the dev agent. So let's generate one token for the dev. Dev, dev, and generate token. Token, and let's test API. Now let's now dev. Now dev access can access the dev thing. Let's dev can access the QA API. QA API. So notice no access deny for the dev. Dev cannot access the QA API. Dev can access the admin. Admin. Yes. Dev cannot access the admin API. Dev can access the protected API. Protected. Yes. Dev can access. So the protected API, this API we have not specified any role, that means they can access. But this admin API can only access by the admin. QA API can access by the QA as well as the admin. And similarly, dev API can access by the dev as well as the admin. So this is the way you get the role base. Whatever the API here developed, you can specify the dependency. Hey, this depend on this specific role 1, role 2, role 3, whatever the role you can define. So this is the way you can develop API, and you can specify this API can only access by the specific developer or the admin. This API is only accessed by the QA and admin. This is the only API accessed by the admin. This is the API that can access by the only authenticated person. Right person can access. Maybe whatever the role, this is no not a factor. And this is the API, some generic API. This API does not require any kind of authentication authorization role. So here you can develop API that can be public API. Just you can say mention just API, any public API. Okay, so whatever the API anyone can access, they are not demanding any kind of a data API kind of a run. Notice that they are not required any kind of validation, but you can define API, correct? And similarly, you have a different API. We develop the public API and also develop the protected API. This a protected API one. Let's say this is the protected API. This is the public API. This is the protected. Public API can access by the anyone. Protected API only accessed by the valid user. Whatever the valid user. Okay, validated user only can access. Okay, right? And sometime you protected API even but you want role base. So you can specify admin API, dev API, QA API. Here you can specify role. Which role? Admin role or admin or QA role, dev or admin role. What are the permutation combination according to your application? You can define. So notice this is a very simplified way in the Python. We can define the API, maybe public API, maybe authenticated API, only valid user can access API, or the valid user have a specific role only access. These role-based API. So in a real application, whenever you are developing application, always you need to protect your API. You can tell this API can access by the only specific person. Those are the defined by role based or permission based. So hope this will help you to understand how you can define. So just again recap what we did. We just here did the kind of our configuration for the database. Here you can define database table. Here you can define your Swagger API request and response. This is the request. This is the response kind of model, and here you can create the database session. And now we are using our crypto context and REST API our auth to password bearer token. So here your token URL. So whatever the token URL you pass here. So these two modules we are used, and here write some method like value get the password, verify password, create access token. You are in a JWT token to create the token. Once you create a token, you have to pass your secret key and algorithms. And similarly, you can validate the particular whatever the token you have. This token is right or not. JWT encode the token with the same secret and same hash, and you get the payload. From the payload, you figure out the username. From username, you can check the database exists or not. If exists, you can return the database. Sometime you want to ensure that key, whatever the user you return, though if you want to check the role, check the particular role is mapped to the allow role, and allow role you can pass while the define the API. So whenever you are defining API, here you can pass the role kind of a one role, two role, three role, many role, whatever you want. And very simplest way, just do exercise of this, and now you feel comfortable how you are protecting securing your microservice API. So let's that is the things for the day I have, and hope this will be you can understand very simplified way with just kind of a practice. If you practice it, okay, if you practice it, you can do. So, what the summary? What we till we are able to successfully expose your public API, expose your private. This is the public API. Public API, you can expose the private API. Private API also can be role-based API, a role-based API. Maybe for the dev only role, for the QA only role, or for the admin only role. Okay, so this API you can specify the role. So role-based API you can develop. authenticated user-based API you can develop, and the public API you can develop without any authentication authorization. Anyone can access the API. Okay, so very simplified way you can develop this API using just JWT and crypto context module. And for the developing API, we are using the Fast API framework to develop this API. So this is the the context today I have. If just go through, I'll try to make simplified in a one file so that anyone can easily initial understanding can understand. But really, when we go to a real application, that should be some configuration file, that should be some separate classes, this should be in a separate classes, this should be in a separate classes, and whole your authentication authorization technique, everything should be in maybe some author JWT utility authentication kind of classes segregate. And similarly, this is the API in a separate. So for making simplified versions, I for initial learning you can say go with the simplified way. But whenever you're going the real application, you can decouple the API, the separate part configuration, separate class, model is separate class, so that your project can be more maintainable in the future. But from the learning perspective, from the beginner, it's a very simplified. Let's start with the simple one classes, and you can easily understand the concept. Once you understand the concept, the way implementation, the way integration happened, the way method invocation happened, the way token verification happened, if the concept is clear, you can surely write this everything in a couple of different Python files, and those are the recommended way. Okay, but my objective is not just to make a more complicated kind of a couple of files. Instead, just simple one file you can easily do step by steps, and you can easily build the API, and the API integrate this authentication, authorization, and role based authorization as well. As so hope this information is helpful for you. Thank you.